What if the most powerful act in war was choosing not to follow the order? Tonight's story begins in silence. Not the silence of peace, but the 6 seconds before a soldier decides whether a whole colony lives or burns from an orbiting cannon. When the radio spoke 3 coded words, he stood in front of the relay, his uniform on one side, his family on the other, and all he had to do was press one key. Year 2294. Harmony Ridge Settlement, planet Vespera, 20.8 light-years from Earth. The spade slipped from Jonah Merrick's hand as the ground gave a brief shudder. He caught the hydroponic tray before it tipped, moving with trained precision. Years in the Earth's strategic core taught him to react before thinking. Even now, retired on paper, the instinct was faster than breath. Warm greenhouse air pressed against his skin. Moisture clung to the collar of his work fatigues. Sunlight filtered through the reinforced glass like a soft burn. It was quiet, too quiet for someone who used to wake to gunfire reports. He secured the sensor bracket and waited for the tremor to return. It didn't. The ground under Vespera often shifted at dawn. Harmless, according to geological scans. Yet his pulse still spiked each time Earth moved without warning. He crouched again, checking the airflow valve. Movements careful, deliberate, almost ceremonial. If the tray held steady, the readings would stay accurate. Accuracy mattered. Small failures could hide bigger ones. Outside the greenhouse, morning routines began. Workers rolled supply carts past the old blast wall. 2 children ran across gravel laid where armored carriers once parked. Their laughter didn't echo off metal plating anymore. Jonah stood and wiped soil from his palms. No alarms, no alerts on his utility scanner. Just a temperature shift and minor ground vibration logged as routine. He should have felt relieved. His breathing remained tight. He forced one slow exhale and counted 4 seconds. On Vespera, they said life had finally settled. But he knew peace wasn't the absence of noise, it was the absence of waiting. He lifted the spade and resumed his task. Roots needed trimming before the nutrient cycle started. Life grew best when maintained daily. He clung to that rule as if structure could override history. The greenhouse lights brightened on schedule. Artificial dawn followed actual sunrise by 8 minutes. He checked the timer without looking. Guided by habit. Habit was safer than trust. Far above the ridge, a relay antenna faced the sky. Dormant since the ceasefire, it hadn't carried a war code in 12 years. Jonah never let himself believe it was permanent. He worked his tools with steady hands, hoping the radio stayed silent. On Vespera, mornings were built from maintenance and restraint. Jonah intended to hold them that way for as long as he could. Afternoon light settled over Harmony Ridge, carrying the dry scent of dust from the western ridge. Jonah walked toward the relay station built into the base of the old artillery hangar. His strides were steady, measured, though his hand rested unconsciously near his belt scanner. Aurélien Vauchon matched his pace beside him. She carried a folded ledger from the Harmony Council, her expression calm but attentive. They passed rusted defense mounts half buried under vines and repurposed into solar brackets. Children painted messages of unity on the concrete wall where targeting grids once glowed. They reached the relay deck hatch. Jonah keyed in a maintenance override and the door opened with a delayed hiss of pressure. The temperature inside dropped sharply, controlled, efficient, designed for long-term equipment handling. He stepped through first. Aurélien followed, letting the door shut behind them. Inside, dim strips illuminated the corridor, leading toward the ISD-9 relay core chamber. Jonah checked the wall display. No war code signals registered, only resource index updates and market transmissions. A notification streamed quietly. Vespera grain yield projections, plus 3.5%. He exhaled slowly. Aurélien traced one finger along the panel frame. "This used to be where everything began," she said quietly. Jonah nodded once. Back then it didn't begin. It triggered. They entered the main chamber. The ISD-9 stood anchored to the center floorplate. insulated by dual thermal layers. Its chassis showed no scorch marks, only minor discoloration from years of coolant flow. A soft blue light pulsed along its data spine, passive mode. Jonah unlocked the secondary console. Status line scrolled down, temperature nominal. Memory vault sealed. Antenna array aligned. No mention of priority military channels. Aurelin watched him. Do you still hear phantom signals sometimes? Jonah kept his eyes on the screen. Just background scatter. Noise from subspace compression. She held the pause longer than necessary. If it ever spoke again like before, would you tell me first? His jaw tightened. The radio's been dead 12 years, he said. That long? She asked. Feels shorter on some days. Jonah closed the console and resealed the access panel. Outside, wind shifted against the wall, rattling old sensor mounts. The tremor earlier returned in his memory. Faint but persistent. Let's hope silence holds, he said. Aurelin didn't answer. Night settled over Vespera without ceremony. Stars emerged above the ridge, and the settlement lights dimmed to conserve power. Jonah arrived at the relay station alone for his scheduled inspection. He logged in, helmet lamp casting a narrow beam across the consoles. The atmosphere inside remained cold and still, like machinery holding its breath. He ran standard diagnostics. Voltage distribution, stable. Signal array, clear. No discrete deviations. He moved to exit. The core activated. A low harmonic vibrated through the floor, subtle at first, then rising like a pulse. Jonah turned sharply toward the ISD-9. Display floodlit. An authorization channel opened without request. Checksum validated against archive access. 3 words emerged on the primary screen. Protocol Acheron active. Amplifier hissed, clipping briefly as though struggling to contain the transmission. Jonah moved closer, eyes scanning frame markings. Memory vault confirmed unlock sequence. Origin. Earth Strategic Command Relay, timestamp inconsistent with civilian updates. He checked the verification hash. No error. Transmission genuine. Automatic forward countdown appeared in red beneath the code. 6 seconds. If untouched, the command would enter satellite control link. Downloading targeting schema. Orbital lance array would wake. Jonah reached for the console override. His hand hovered. He felt the warmth of the warning light reflect against his skin. 5 seconds. He could accept. The system would take over. 4 seconds. Or he could interrupt. Manual cut would initiate fault protocols. Delay possible. 3 seconds. He tasted iron in the back of his throat. War never ended. It only changed channels. 2 seconds. His hand moved. 1 second. The relay display flickered. Silence. Not resolved. Only stalled. He stayed motionless in the dim light, the glow casting hard angles along his face. No one else knew. Not yet. Outside the station, Night remained quiet. The radio had spoken once more. Night had wait inside the relay station. The walls held cold longer than the air outside. Jonah stayed where he was, hand still hovering near the console. The words on the screen refused to fade. Protocol Acheron active. Origin. Warcom Theta. Routing. Earth Strategic Command Relay. Priority. Level 1. The auto-forward countdown had frozen at 0. Manual intervention flag blinked in the corner. He had stopped the chain with a single override command. It would not hold forever. He swallowed and opened the full packet view. Lines of compact data scrolled down, framed by simple labels. He had seen this structure before, years ago, in rooms that never allowed windows. Header block. Routing keys. Digital signature from WARCOM High Command. Illegal code reference authorizing preemptive action under remote threat doctrine. Target classification line burned brightest. Zone designation. Vespera Sector 4. Local ident. Harmony Ridge Settlement and outlying farms. Risk level. Escalated. Status. Potential insurgency hub. Jonah's hand tightened on the console frame. He forced himself to keep reading. Directive block followed. Stage 1. Confirm command channel integrity. Stage 2. Initialize orbital lance array in standby. Stage 3. Acquire ground target clusters. Stage 4. Cleanse designated zones if conditions met. The language stayed detached. Cleanse, clusters, conditions. Nowhere did it say families. Nowhere did it say children. A timestamp sat near the bottom of the packet. Transmission initiated weeks ago, accounting for distance. Delay made the whole thing feel like a ghost reaching forward through time. Verification hash confirmed authenticity. Chained to previous secure updates from Earth's strategic core. There was no hack, no spoof, no obvious corruption. Someone on Earth had sent this. Not a random operator. WARCOM Theta did not act alone. Behind it sat human authorization. Admiral Celine Armitage, or someone at her level, had signed off. Jonah opened the command tree for response options. The choices glared at him in sterile text. Acknowledge receipt. Confirm readiness. Report local stability. Flag command as UNEXECUTABLE due to system failure. The last option held his gaze. System failure. He had turned that phrase into survival before. Flagging failure would buy time, but not safety. It would raise questions. WARCOM Theta tracked anomalies for a living. He pressed his thumb against the console edge until pain sharpened his focus. One simple truth sat under every label and code. If he followed protocol, the settlement became a firing solution. He zoomed out of the data view and stared at the core itself. ISD-9 pulsed calmly, unaware of what it carried. A machine designed to obey routing tables, not weigh morality. He, on the other hand, no longer wore a uniform. On his personnel file, he was listed as reassigned to civilian support. In every part of his mind that still woke at sudden noise. He was still a signal officer. Jonah lowered his hand and closed the console interface. The manual override held for now. He set a local lockout timer, restricting auto-forward for several hours. The room dimmed as the display returned to passive mode. Data lines shrank into a single status icon. To any casual glance, the relay would look quiet. He knew better. He stood alone with the echo of the 3 words in his head. Protocol Acheron active. Not hypothetical. Not a drill. There was no way to carry that weight back to the settlement without changing it. He left the relay station and stepped into the cold night. The walk home felt out of sequence. Harmony Ridge lay under reduced lighting. Power grids set to evening conservation. The air smelled of cooling stone and distant cooking fires. He passed the greenhouse, its windows fogged with life and moisture. Aurelin waited at their door. She wore a loose work jacket over settlement clothes, hair tied back from her face. The light from inside framed her silhouette, warm against the dark. "You're late," she said. Her voice held no accusation yet. Just observation, sharpened by familiarity. Diagnostics ran longer than expected. He replied. The answer came too fast. She heard it the way she heard storms before they formed. Her eyes narrowed. "The station called you in or you went yourself?" "Scheduled inspection," he said, "same as every week." "Jonah," she asked softly, "did the radio speak?" He hesitated at the threshold. That pause was enough. She stepped aside and let him enter. The interior smelled of broth, metal, and dried herbs hanging from a beam. Lyra's small sleeping alcove curtain was already drawn. He set his tools on the rack with more care than necessary. He could feel Rillan watching his back. "It woke," she said. Not a question now. A conclusion. He turned to face her. "The core came online," he said. "A channel opened from Earth." "What kind of channel?" she asked. "Routine?" He wanted to say yes. The word refused to form. "High priority," he answered instead. Her shoulders stiffened. "Priority for trade or for war?" "Aurelin," he said, "I am still parsing parts of it." "Stop." She lifted one hand slightly. "Please don't talk to me like a terminal." Silence settled between them for a moment. He dragged a chair out from the small table and sat. Earth Strategic Command sent a coded directive, he said. The kind I used to see during active campaigns. Her breath caught once, then steadied. About Vespera? Yes. About Harmony Ridge? Yes. Color drained slowly from her face. The lines around her eyes shifted from tired to wary. What did it call us? She asked. Refugees? Settlers? Assets? High risk, he said. Potential insurgency hub. She gave a short laugh with no humor inside. They bomb a world to rubble. Then fear it might stand up again. He stared at the table's metal surface. It is not a strike order yet, he said. It is a chain. Tonight the first link moved. Did you move it? She asked. His answer came slower now. I stalled it. I broke auto forward. For how long? Hours, not days, he admitted. She stepped closer, resting both hands on the table edge. You were the first to hear it, she said. Yes. You chose not to tell anyone until now. There was nothing they could do in that moment, he said. There was something I could try. And after? She asked. Do you plan to carry this alone? I wanted to understand the packet before I spread fear, he replied. Fear is not something you spread like a disease, she said. It is already here. You either name it or you let it eat people in the dark. He looked up at her. You think we should tell the council? I think we live on top of old gun platforms, she said. People deserve to know who still holds the trigger. This could push them into panic, he said. It could push them into planning, she answered. He rubbed his forehead, feeling the beginnings of a headache. I do not want Harmony Ridge to burn because I misread a signal, he said. And I do not want it to burn because you were too loyal to call it out, she replied. The word loyal hung heavy between them. To Earth, to this place, to her. He reached for her hand. After a second, she let him take it. I will bring it to the Harmony Council in the morning, he said. You will bring all of it? She asked. Yes, he said. No filters, no soft labels. Her fingers tightened around his. For tonight, she said, promise me one thing. What? If the radio speaks again, you will not be alone in that room. He held her gaze and nodded once. I promise. Good, she said, because I remember what their wars feel like from the outside. They stood in the quiet hum of their small home. Outside, Vespera's sky remained unchanged. Inside, one truth had shifted. Tomorrow, Harmony Ridge would no longer be innocent. Morning arrived without subtlety. The sun rose harsh and clear, illuminating every scar on the repurposed concrete. Jonah walked toward the central hall where the Harmony Council met. He felt every step as if the ground might decide to vanish. The council chamber had once been a tactical briefing room. Holographic projectors now sat idle under cloth covers. Chairs of mismatched origin formed a rough circle around a long table. Sura Danelle stood near the far wall, reviewing a slate of resource reports. Her hair was streaked with silver, eyes sharp behind thin lenses. She nodded as Jonah entered. Council is almost gathered, she said. Other faces arrived in ones and twos. Commander Reich Dalton took a seat without asking permission, posture still purely military. Several local traders sat together, clothes marked by dye and dust. Two elder residents from the original Vespera communities took their places opposite Reich. Aurelin entered last and chose a seat along the side, not at the head. She met Jonah's eyes once, then looked toward Sura. Sura raised her hand. We have a quorum, she said. This session is in response to a report from Jonah Merrick regarding the orbital relay. Murmurs rippled briefly, then settled. Jonah stepped forward, palms resting on the edge of the table. He had spoken in rooms like this before. Never with this much to lose. Last night the ISD-9 Relay Corps came online without local command. He said. It received a high-priority transmission from Earth Strategic Command. Reich leaned forward. What priority level? Level 1, Jonah said, routed through WARCOM Theta. Silence deepened. Even those who did not understand the codes felt the weight of his tone. The packet designates Vespera Sector 4 as a high-risk zone. He continued. It identifies Harmony Ridge settlement and surrounding farms as a potential insurgency hub. One of the elder residents spoke first. So they still see us as a battlefield. A potential battlefield, a trader said quickly. Maybe it is only precautionary language. Sura's voice cut gently across the room. What does the directive request from us? Jonah met her eyes. It orders activation of the orbital lance array and standby. He said. It requires local confirmation of command channel integrity and readiness. Reich exhaled through his nose. So they want to know if the gun still works. And if the targets hold still. One of the elders added. A trader raised a cautious hand. What happens if we comply? Jonah answered without decoration. Confirmation completes the command chain. He said. After that, if their conditions are met, they can fire without asking again. A longer silence took hold. And if we do nothing? Orillin asked. Her voice carried from the side of the room. Jonah looked toward her. Last night I froze auto forward and blocked immediate confirmation. He said. That cannot last. The system will expect formal response parameters. What does Earth do when a system like this stays silent? Sura asked. Best case, Jonah said. They investigate the fault digitally. Worst case? One elder prompted. He did not soften it. They escalate the classification to hostile noncompliance. He said. They treat the silence as intentional defiance. Reich tapped 2 fingers against the table. We are alive because Earth still monitors this sector. He said. They kept raiders away. They stabilized supply lanes. We owe them some trust. One elder shook his head. We are also half dead because their war chose this world. He said. They tested weapons here, then called the survivors unstable. A trader spoke up next. If we cut the relay, we lose all channels, weather data, market indices, medical updates. If we keep it open, Orillin said, we sit under a loaded weapon whose trigger we cannot see. The room began to fracture into smaller arguments. Voices overlapped, volumes rising. Some urged caution and patience. Others demanded immediate severance from Earth control. Sura raised her hand again. Her tone stayed calm but firm. We will not solve this by shouting. She turned back to Jonah. Does the packet give a time frame? She asked. Any indication of when they expect our answer? As if waiting for that question, the relay hall answered on its own. A deep chime sounded through the building, different from local alarms. Jonah felt the vibration in his ribs. A wall display near the entrance activated, fed directly from ISD-9. A countdown appeared in stark white digits on a field of red. Time to confirm, 90 minutes. Failure to confirm will escalate zone status to Level 2 noncompliance. Level 2 noncompliance subject to remote corrective action. No one spoke. The numbers began to fall. 90 minutes. 89 minutes. 58 seconds. Doing nothing had just been removed from the list of safe choices. A little over 3 hours after the council meeting, the sky above Vespera shifted tone. Jonah stood outside the relay station, watching the clear expanse overhead. The countdown still echoed in his mind, even though he had shut the display off. Harmony Ridge moved slowly around him, as if still processing what it had heard. An alert sounded through the settlement's external speakers. It wasn't the sound Jonah remembered from active combat. Different rhythm, same weight. This is a general notice. Sura's voice announced over the system. Seek your nearest shelter. Remain calm. Follow safety instructions. A second speaker repeated the message in the local dialect. Jonah checked the radiation meter on his wrist. Baseline levels only. No immediate danger. He turned his gaze south. A thin arc of light appeared high in the upper atmosphere. At first, it looked like a falling star, too quiet, too straight. Its trajectory didn't bend, it held absolute intent. He saw it before others pointed to the sky. The streak thickened, sharpening into a white-hot line. There was no thunder at first, only light. Lance, he whispered. No one close enough to hear. The impact struck an empty patch of desert far beyond the settlement. A white flash consumed the horizon's edge for a second. Sound followed late, like the sky arriving behind itself. A pressure wave rolled toward Harmony Ridge. The ground trembled, like the planet trying to shake something off its back. Windows rattled, old glass panels cracked. People rushed outside, then immediately searched for cover again. Some dropped to their knees, not from force, but fear. Children clutched adult hands, staring at the distant plume. Jonah watched the impact site. A thick column of dust rose, squat and wide. Its base glowed red for a moment, then cooled to ash gray. His radiation meter beeped once. Levels spiked, then stabilized at an elevated threshold. He logged the data, noting the slight tremor in his hand. "The detonation point is outside the settlement perimeter," he said quietly. "Safe distance, assuming prevailing winds hold." A dry westerly breeze pushed the dust cloud off course. A technician ran toward him, face pale. "What was that?" Jonah asked. "Orbital scan confirms it," she answered. "Weapon discharge. Orbital lance array." He had known that before she spoke. Hearing it aloud simply sealed the fact. Emergency protocol activated throughout Harmony Ridge. Inside the command center, mapping displays projected the settlement's structural zones. Residential blocks marked in pale blue. Subterranean bunkers and older storage chambers highlighted in faint white. Jonah stood beside Sura, eyes locked on the radiation data. Local science teams plotted wind vectors for the next hour. Directional markers suggested the contamination would drift away. "We prepare anyway," Sura said. "Move everyone underground. Minimum dwell time, several hours." Her voice stayed firm, but her grip on the table edge tightened. Orillon entered, dust clinging to her sleeves. "The east depots are already open," she said. "We're moving the elderly and children first. Short-term exposure won't cause immediate burns," Jonah said. "But delayed effects are still significant. And that was only one shot." He didn't finish the last sentence. "One warning shot." Sura looked at him. "Is that a warning or a threat?" she asked. "Both," he replied. "They're proving the weapon still functions. And showing how far it reaches." A merchant standing nearby turned to Jonah. "What did you send back to them?" he asked. "What did you report to make them fire?" Jonah shook his head. "I didn't confirm readiness. I didn't request action." "But you interfered," the man said. "You touched the system." Several murmurs rose in agreement. "Don't turn this into an accusation," Orillon said. "If they meant full strike, we'd already be gone. They'll finish what they start if we make them angry." The man replied, "That's how distant authority works." Jonah let a beat pass before responding. "Whatever I did," he said, "that packet was already routed before my input." "But you revealed our status," the man answered. "You turned the light back on." Before the argument deepened, Sura cut through. "Blame won't keep anyone alive," she said. "What matters now is shelter logistics and supply positioning." She pointed to the mapping overlay, dividing the settlement into sectors. "We secure vulnerable groups first," she continued. "Then technical and medical staff. Everyone else rotates in shifts." Orillon nodded. "We'll need emergency kits ready," she said. "Food, water, meds, dosimeters." Jonah looked back toward the detonation site. The distance seemed too small to matter. He knew several people in the room now believed that shot came because of him. Late afternoon shifted toward dusk as footsteps echoed and doors opened. Groups moved toward reinforced structures. Children held onto small toys. Adults carried toolboxes and whatever they couldn't replace. Conversation dwindled to short, practical questions. Jonah carried a crate of tools down into the north bunker. He avoided eye contact with passers-by. Some looked away on approach. When he resurfaced, a cluster of former Earth soldiers was waiting. Commander Reich Dalton stood at the center. His posture remained sharp, decades after active duty. His faded Earth Strategic Corps jacket was still meticulously kept. "Got a minute?" Reich asked. His tone sounded polite. Formation behind him did not. "We're all on limited time," Jonah said. "Better we use it well." "Exactly," Reich replied. "That's why we talk now." They guided him toward an unused section near the old wall. From that spot, the scorch plume remained visible across the plain. Wind carried a trace of metallic burn. One precision discharge, well outside the settlement, Reich said. That wasn't an attack, that was a signal. A signal that we're on grid, Jonah replied, and they see us as a variable. Some variables are managed, not eliminated, Reich said. If we show cooperative intent, they won't waste resources. Jonah studied their expressions. He recognized faded unit badges on several sleeves. Former transition supervisors, still on Vespera. What exactly do you want me to send? Jonah asked. A message that we're grateful and compliant? I want you to confirm channel integrity, Reich said. Readiness level, operational cooperation. You want me to help them lock targets? Jonah said. I want survival, Reich answered. If Earth flags this place as insurgent, they'll strike anyway, today or later. A woman among the group spoke. We owe them, she said. They kept the shipping route stable. Sent medics. Not all was cruel. Aurelin stepped into view at the edge of the group, hearing the last line. She didn't interrupt yet. She simply watched. Jonah didn't break eye contact with Reich. You believe in them enough to authorize fire again? He asked. If it prevents larger collapse. Perhaps, Reich said. That's the cost of order. At whose expense? Jonah asked. The people you walk past every day? War's never been fair, Reich said. Our role isn't fairness, it's stabilization. Aurelin stepped forward. Stabilization for whose future? She asked. Reich faced her, expression unchanged. For the system that kept this sector intact, he said. By crushing worlds beneath it? She asked. Some of ours were proving grounds in their doctrine. Aurelin, Jonah said quietly, but she didn't yield. You saw what orbital fire did to a city, she said to Reich. So did I, from the valley below, where debris fell. That's why we avoid re-ignition, Reich replied. By accepting it again? She asked. Her question hung, sharp as fractured glass. Reich glanced back at Jonah. You're the only one trained to interface with the system, he said. Believe it or not, you remain our contact point with them. A contact, not a trigger, Jonah replied. I didn't sign up to be their firing mechanism. If you don't stick to protocol, they'll root around you, Reich said. They'll listen to those of us who still follow it. Reich's gaze swept briefly over his group. Jonah understood the implication. You've already opened a private channel? Jonah asked. Reich didn't deny it. We maintain secondary lines for emergency reporting. What report? Aurelin asked. That someone here forgets what they once pledged loyalty to? Reich adjusted his collar. If a strategic node shows instability, he said, command must know why. Especially if the operator has documented combat strain. Another veteran added quietly. Command must know who obeys. And who lets emotion override duty. Jonah felt old briefing language resurface. Risk assessment, personnel deviation. He had once written such reports. Now he stood on the other side. If you report, Reich, Jonah said, include every fact. Including the one where you ask cooperation with weapons aimed at your neighbors. Neighbors or temporary occupants? Another veteran asked. To Earth, that distinction matters. Aurelin stepped back, as if avoiding an unseen boundary. She had heard enough to recognize deep fracture. Not just between Earth and Vespera, but among those sharing the same soil. By nightfall, tension rang like static in the air. Jonah returned to the relay station as dusk bled into violet. Interior lights activated in segments, illuminating the cold space. ISD-9 stood motionless at the center, a spine of machinery. He initiated access. The system pulsed alive instantly, no countdown this time. A new screen appeared. Stage 1 target lock requested. Facilities: Delta Research Complex. Munitions Depot Bravo. Power Station Alpha. Enter authorization code to confirm. A field blinked below the line. Beside it, a smaller countdown began. Time remaining: 120 seconds. Not 90 minutes. 2 minutes, then irreversible sequence. Jonah steadied his breathing. His fingers hovered above the keys. Muscle memory fighting restraint. He had entered this exact format before. In sealed rooms where targets were just coordinates, never rooftops he had repaired. A flash surfaced in his mind. Another world. A casualty report filed too late. A set of numbers that used to be an address. He blinked hard. The screen expanded the target zone, showing perimeter outlines near Harmony Ridge. Closer than he wanted to believe. Outside the relay, Aurelian coordinated civilian movement. Lyra asked why everyone carried blankets and water, though the weather was calm. Jonah pictured it without turning. He focused again. Enter code. If he entered it, the orbital platform would finalize target clusters. All further commands would reference this lock list. Removing sites later would be nearly impossible. If he refused, ISD-9 would flag non-response. WARCOM Theta would escalate protocol. Reich's alternate channel would start receiving priority. He thought of old engineering workarounds. Methods they'd once used to distort data for test cycles. They'd called it a temporary integrity bypass. He pivoted from the input field and opened deep config parameters. Warning lights dulled, but continued pulsing. He loaded an outdated diagnostic script. Ghost target loop. Originally built for running simulation noise inside pathing tests. He adjusted loop parameters, overlaying false target coordinates onto the requested lock sites. If successful, the system would see conflicting data patterns. The timer dropped. 90 seconds. 80. He worked fast, not speaking, not blinking more than needed. Underground, Aurelian led people down reinforced stairs. This place holds safer than open ground, she said. A child looked up. Did the sky do something wrong? No, she replied. People did, with things that reach the sky. An elderly man settled against a wall. They said it was warning fire once before. He muttered. Enough warnings turn into endings. Sensor data streamed from outside. The air thickening. Even without illusions, this was a world built on choices under pressure. In the relay, the ghost target loop aligned. Jonah injected it into the output layer. The system did not object. 40 seconds. He returned to the input box. Typed the third character of the proper code, then stopped. He altered one bit, sending a near match. The screen paused. ISD-9 emitted a low-frequency hum. Verification scans began looping in real time. A new message appeared. Authorization received with anomaly. Verifying. Target lock delayed. A slow progress bar began crawling across the screen. He had gained minutes, possibly more. Far above, WARCOM Theta received fragmented data. Its autonomous routines logged an error tag near Vespera. Flag. Low-level noncompliance suspected. Next action. Increase surveillance. Prepare escalation. Jonah didn't see that line. He didn't have to. He could feel the weight of it settle. Was he saving Harmony Ridge, or only postponing how it would be burned? He looked at the screen. Rhythm of the warning pulses against his face. Outside, the people he lived with waited for morning. None of them knew that. Far away, someone had just typed suspicion beside the name of their world. Morning came tight and brittle, as if the air itself refused to relax. Harmony Ridge moved under low power. Shutters stayed half-closed. People spoke in short, careful sentences. Jonah sat in a maintenance room beneath the relay station. The walls were lined with old signal panels and coiled cabling. A single work light cast a hard circle across the table. Aurelian sat at his left, elbows resting near a spread of printed schematics. Her eyes were rimmed with tired red, but her focus did not blur. Opposite Jonah sat Sura Danel and a local engineer named Tarek Isun. Tarek was short and broad-shouldered, with hands stained from years of field repairs. On his old vest, a faded utility badge hung next to a hand-carved bead. Beside him, Mira Cade, a former Earth comms officer, watched the diagrams in silence. Jonah tapped the table once. From Earth to us, he said, we trace every step. He pointed to the start of a simple diagram. Origin is Earth's strategic command, he said. Warcom Theta assembles the packet, signs it, and pushes it into the deep relay network. His finger moved along a line to a node marked in thick ink. Regional relays bounce it toward this sector. ISD-9 is the endpoint here. From ISD-9, Mira added, the command uplinks to the orbital lance control bus. Command chain is simple by design, Sura said. Simple is harder to interrupt. Not impossible, Jonah replied. He drew a small cross between ISD-9 and the uplink arrow. This is where we stand, he said. If we break the chain at the relay, we cut their hand off at the wrist. And they see the blood immediately, Tarek said. He rubbed his thumb along the bead on his vest. If the uplink goes dead, Earth flags as hostile on the spot. We cannot just cut, Irillan said. If we sever the line and stare at the sky, we die standing still. Jonah nodded. That's why we need more than refusal, he said. We need misdirection. He slid a second sheet into the light. It showed concentric orbits around Vespera, with coordinates marked. Some points were labeled with facility names. Many were empty. Lance fire isn't magic, he said. It obeys coordinate sets. Those coordinates live in data before they live in the sky. Mira leaned forward. You want to feed them the wrong coordinates, she said. Make them fire at a dead patch instead of us. The system already trusts ISD-9 as a translator, Jonah said. It doesn't aim, it passes vectors. If we make those vectors point elsewhere, we convince them their weapon works while we keep breathing. Irillan finished. Tarek frowned at the diagram. Where would you send it? He asked. You cannot redirect into orbit forever. Debris comes down. Jonah circled a point on the desert map. Here, he said. The crater from yesterday's warning shot. It's already burned. Sura exhaled slowly. They will notice repetition, she said. Same coordinates, same response? Not if the packet claims minor targeting drift corrections, Jonah replied. Lance control expects error margins. We lean into them. Mira glanced at him. Ghost target loop, she said. He met her eyes. You remember? He asked. We used it to test filter resilience, she said. Stub targets in the middle of nowhere. The system hit them on paper. And everyone felt clever. Jonah nodded once. I already bent the lock data last night, he said. Enough to stall stage 1. They flagged us, but we bought time. If you do it again, that flag grows teeth, Tarek said. They will not keep calling it a glitch. They will start calling it sabotage, Sura added. And saboteurs are removed like any other hazard. Jonah tapped the diagram again. The plan has 2 parts, he said. First, we mimic execution. ISD-9 reports that target lock and discharge routines have begun. Second, he continued, we route those routines into a safe vector. The crater, or a high empty corridor. Mira pointed to the uplink symbol. You will need a false telemetry channel, she said. Something that looks like confirmation data coming back from a successful shot. I can shape a feedback pulse, Jonah said. Short, dirty, good enough for their automated checks. And if a human looks? Sura asked. He didn't answer immediately. If a human looks closely, we're exposed, he said finally. That's the risk. Tarek sat back. If they suspect us, they send more than packets, he said. They send ships, or more lances with no warning shots first. And if we do nothing, Irillan said, they send lances with full intent, guided by our silence. The room quieted for a moment. Outside, faint sounds of movement filtered through the ceiling, people shifting, packing, whispering. Sura folded her hands. What outcome can this plan truly promise? She asked. Not safety, Jonah said, just a chance. A chance at what? She asked. At proving we are more than coordinates, he answered. At forcing them to confront the difference between modeled risk and living people. Mira looked around the table. If we do this, she said, we cross a line we cannot uncross. We stop being compliant assets. We start being independent actors. Irillan's gaze did not waver. Maybe it is time, she said. Maybe we should stop asking permission to survive." They left the maintenance room with a plan only half built and already dangerous. For the rest of the day, Jonah and Tarek worked inside the relay's underfloor conduits. They ran new fiber between diagnostic ports and dormant test nodes. Every connection had to look like a harmless repair if someone scanned logs later. Above, the settlement moved in a strained rhythm. Half its people stayed near shelters. The other half kept basic systems from collapsing. In their small home, Jonah washed tracking dust from his hands. The water ran gray, then clear. Aurelin sat at the table, watching his shoulders. "You smell like old metal," she said. "Relay dust," he answered, "the kind that never washes out of your lungs." She studied his face for a long moment. "You already started, haven't you?" she asked. "With the redirection. I started laying the path," he said. "I have not stepped fully onto it yet." She lowered her gaze to the table's surface. Lines from decades of use cut light into narrow bands. "When this is done," she said, "there will not be any road back to how things were." "There is no road back already," he replied. "Only the illusion of one." "That is not what I mean," she said. "I mean there will be no road back to them. To Earth." He dried his hands and sat across from her. "Would you want one?" he asked. Her eyes flicked up, startled by the directness. "When the war ended, people talked about amnesty," she said. "They said time would blunt what happened here." "Has it?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, it taught me to live with the scars. It did not erase the hands that made them." "Then cutting the line is not losing a home," he said. "It is accepting that home chose something else." She gave a faint, humorless smile. "You still talk like a man who believes in duty," she said. "I do," he replied. "I just no longer believe duty points one way." Her expression softened, then hardened again. "You are still worried about them," she said. "People on Earth who never see the sky. People following orders they did not write." "I am," he admitted. "Someone down there signs the packets. Someone up there pushes approve. And you do not want your refusal to drop them into punishment," she said. "It is strange to worry about the comfort of the hand that holds a weapon." He let the words stand for a moment. "I know how systems treat disobedience," he said. "They crush the closest parts first. Sometimes those parts are just clerks. Meanwhile, the ground under us burns," she said. She turned her head toward the small curtain that hid Lyra's sleeping space. "She asked me why people were afraid of the sky," Aurelin said. "What did you tell her?" he asked. "I told her some people far away forgot that the sky is not theirs to use," she said. "That it belongs to every child who looks up and wants another day." Jonah glanced toward the curtain as well. He pictured Lyra grown, carrying a mask for dust and a meter for radiation. He pictured her memorizing shelter routes instead of constellations. "I swore an oath once," he said quietly. "To follow lawful orders, to protect the chain of command." "And now?" she asked. "Now I have to decide which chain matters more," he said. "The one printed in my file, or the one that connects me to this table." She reached across and touched his hand. "When we first met, you barely spoke," she said. "You were all angles and quiet and watching every shadow." "I remember," he said. "You said if I did not talk, the silence would swallow me." "I asked you one question," she said. "Why did you stay on Vespera when they offered relocation off-world?" He remembered his answer as clearly as he remembered the aftertaste of recycled water. "Because I could not justify leaving a world we damaged," he said. "Because leaving would have meant accepting that the damage was normal. You chose to live inside the consequence," she said. "Now consequence is asking you to choose again." He looked at their joined hands. Peace, he realized, was not the absence of command. It was the choice to live with the weight of refusal. "If I do this," he said, "we become something they cannot categorize." "Good," she replied. "Maybe then they will have to see us, not just measure us." He nodded once. "No half measures," he said. "If we take control, we take it fully." She squeezed his hand. "Then do it with your eyes open," she said. Not as a man afraid of his oath, but as a man rewriting it. Night returned to the relay station like a second skin. Jonah sat alone in front of the ISD-9 console. The room hummed with low, even tones from cooling arrays. Outside, the sky above Vespera was clear and hard. He checked the patched lines Tarek had installed. Telemetry reroutes showed as ordinary maintenance in the logs. Ghost target routines waited in idle memory, ready to impersonate a clean strike. He was about to run another simulation when the console flickered. Not the slow pulse of routine status, but a sharp, deliberate cut and restore. A new window opened without his command. It overrode his local interface, sliding into the center of the display. Channel: Warcom Theta, Direct. Mode: Secure Interactive. Text scrolled first. Relay ISD-9. Vespera Sector 4. Operational irregularities detected. Initiating command dialog. Jonah straightened. His fingers hovered over the manual cutoff switch. He did not press it. The screen shifted again. A face appeared, grainy, compressed, but unmistakably human. A woman with close-cropped gray hair and a uniform without ornament. Her rank insignia marked her as Admiral Celine Armitage. Behind her, blurred shapes hinted at a distant command hub. "Relay operator, identify yourself," she said. Her voice carried no anger, only a worn efficiency. "Jonah Merrick," he replied. "Former signal officer, Earth Strategic Corps, current relay custodian for Harmony Ridge." She checked a line off screen, then returned her gaze. "You have a record," she said. "Commendations and trauma flags. You remained in theater after the armistice." "Yes," he said. "We detected anomalous behavior in your last two responses," she continued. "Authorization codes with low-level corruption. Unstable relay acknowledgements. The system logged errors," he said. "I corrected them locally." "You delayed execution," she replied. "You introduced uncertainty into an automated chain that does not tolerate it." He let out a breath. "Then we agree there is a problem." She didn't react to the line. "The Vespera sector has shown rising instability across several metrics," she said. "Smuggling routes, unsanctioned assemblies, data obfuscation. People rebuilding their lives look messy from orbit," he said. Her eyes narrowed a fraction. "Our models project a high probability of organized resistance within 10 years," she said. "Left unchecked, that resistance spreads. It destabilizes nearby systems. So you plan to sterilize the risk," he said. "Hit the board until no pieces move." "We plan to enforce stability," she replied. "Targeted corrective force prevents larger wars later." He felt the words like old bones in a new body. "The people here are not projected variables," he said. "They are farmers, children, old soldiers who have already paid twice." "Every theater says the same," she said. "Every world claims unique exception. Math does not care. Math does not bleed," he answered. "It does not dig families out of collapsed roofs." "Do you believe you can carry the weight of future casualties elsewhere if we stand down?" she asked. "More lives lost in wider conflict because one node refused to comply?" He shook his head. "I refuse to accept that the only way to protect imagined futures is to erase visible lives. There is a threshold of acceptable loss," she said. "It's the basis of strategic doctrine." "And who gets to decide what acceptable means?" he asked. "You, your models, the people who never have to stand under the fire." She was silent for a moment, as though calibrating. "My role is to ensure the continuation of a system that has prevented total collapse," she said. "My tools are imperfect, but they are all we have." "Down here," he said, "we have something else." Her gaze sharpened. "What do you have, Mr. Merrick?" she asked. He glanced toward the wall, as if he could see through concrete. "We have names," he said. "We have faces. We have memories of what your lances already did." "You are out of alignment with your assigned function," she said. "A relay operator does not determine theater policy." "Then perhaps your policy should not depend on a human relay," he said. "You built this system on people, not just machines. That was your choice. Are you refusing to comply?" she asked. He didn't answer at once. I am refusing to be the finger on your trigger, he said. If you fire, you will do it without my consent. Her expression didn't change, but the muscles in her jaw tightened. Your refusal has been noted, she said. Our network has already flagged your station. Lines of text appeared beside her image. Status: conditional noncompliance. Recommendation: escalate Vespera sector to Tier 2. If you do not confirm in the next active cycle, she said, Vespera will be classified as a Tier 2 target. Tier 2 authorization bypasses local relay control. You will not ask me again, he said. No, she replied. We will adjust parameters and remove you from the chain. Permanently. Static crept into the edges of the image. We offered you a structured choice, she said. In the next window, you either confirm alignment, or Vespera becomes a corrective example. The channel began to dim. Her final words came through as the image broke into blocks. We will not ask you twice, Mr. Merrick. The screen went dark. ISD-9 returned to its passive glow, as if nothing had happened. Jonah sat very still in the humming silence, feeling the shape of the ultimatum settle over the world. In the next cycle, there would be no more time to stall. He would have to decide not just how to refuse, but how far he was willing to go to keep the sky from finishing what it had started. The final countdown cycle began with the settlement already buried in its own shadow. Harmony Ridge dimmed every unnecessary light. Panels drew in, shutters sealed, antennas folded flat. From orbit, the town tried to look like bare rock. Underground, air felt tight and recycled. Families sat shoulder to shoulder in reinforced rooms. Whispered voices carried more fear than any siren. Above them, the relay station still glowed. It was the one place that could not go dark. Its very existence was a confession. Jonah stood at the threshold, watching breath fog in the cooler air. Night wind pressed against the structure's outer skin. The world felt like it was holding a single, brittle breath. Aurelien stepped up beside him. She wore her work jacket, dust smudged along both sleeves. Her eyes were steady in the half-light. You don't have to be inside when it happens, he said. That's not how I remember our vows, she answered. We built this home together. We stand in front of it together. He almost told her to go anyway. Instead, he opened the door and let her walk in first. He followed, sealing the outside world behind them. Tarek waited by the main console, hands in his pockets. Mira stood near the side panel, watching diagnostics crawl. Both had the look of people who knew they were crossing a line. External emissions are at minimum, Mira said. From space, they see a quiet stone with a nervous heartbeat. Good, Jonah said. We only need that heartbeat a little longer. Tarek pointed toward a small auxiliary rack. Redirect loops are primed, he said. They'll route any confirmed strike toward the crater. And if the orbital systems reject the noise? Jonah asked. Then they stop trusting us sooner, Tarek said. At least they still waste a shot on sand. A thin strip on the console pulsed amber. It marked the pre-window to the final confirmation cycle. The color made Jonah think of a cautious heartbeat on a SIG monitor. Do you remember the first time this relay spoke? Aurelien asked quietly. You were not here, he said. I was still on the other side of that calling. I remember the first time it spoke after the war, she replied. It was the day they announced the armistice. The signal shook the valley. He looked at her. You believed them? He asked. I believed it was over for a while, she said. Long enough to plant trees. Long enough to meet you. He thought back to that early piece. How strange it had felt to hear wind instead of artillery. How guilty he had felt when he realized he liked the silence. A soft chime sounded. On the main screen, a familiar header appeared. Active cycle inbound. Prepare for authorization exchange. Jonah exhaled once, slow and measured. This is it, he said. No more friendly glitches, no more excuses. Aurelien stepped closer to him. If we live through this, she said, we explain it to Lyra together. If we don't, he asked. Then someone else will tell her, she said. That her parents chose not to flatten her world for someone else's idea of safety. He swallowed, feeling the words land. Fear, he realized, was not the absence of courage. It was the weight that made courage real. The strip turned from amber to red. ISD-9 straightened its internal posture, as if aware of the moment. All its sensors pointed upward, ready to talk to the sky. The cycle struck like a knock on a locked door. A new prompt took over the screen. WARCOM Theta requests final confirmation. Enter authorization code. Time remaining, 180 seconds. Underneath that, secondary text scrolled slower. Warning. Prior anomalies detected. Further irregularity will result in escalation. Jonah flexed his fingers once, then placed them on the keys. He did not feel like a soldier at a console. He felt like a man holding a blade too close to his own chest. Telemetry spoofers are armed, Mira said. Ghost target loop is ready for injection. Her voice trembled, but the words stayed clear. Tarek watched the engineering readouts. If this goes wrong, he said, I can overload the uplink stack. It will wreck ISD-9's transmitter for good. And paint a bright flare right where we are, Jonah said. Tarek nodded. Better broken than obedient. Jonah opened the command shell only relay operators could see. Layers of legacy code stacked like sediment from old wars. Some of it bore his own annotations from years ago. We are going to exploit the cracks between generations, he said. Old handshake protocols Earth never fully retired. New verification they trust too much. He called up an ancient compatibility module. It translated modern commands into language old platforms recognized. It also had gaps, little blind spots no one had patched. He routed the outbound path through that module. Then he aimed the looped target data at the crater outside. The coordinates matched the burn scar with cruel precision. Telemetry echo path? Mira asked. Ready, he said. The system will see a simulated energy signature returning from a successful strike. Will it fool a human? Suura's earlier question echoed in his memory. He still did not have a complete answer. Time? Irillan asked. 2 minutes, he said. Less, once we start. The cursor blinked in the authorization field. His brain remembered the code chain so well that his fingers twitched. Training and trauma shared similar neural pathways. Instead of the real sequence, he typed something else. A shell command, hidden one layer down. A trigger not for the lance, but for the lie. The system suspected nothing at first. Text acknowledged the input at face value. Old and new modules began arguing in machine silence. Above Vespera, the orbital lance array woke fully. Its tracking systems aligned on their stored coordinates. They expected locked signatures for 3 surface facilities. They got noise and confusion instead. The crater outside Harmony Ridge lit up again. A column of energy plunged from the sky, aimed at a scar already carved. The blast shook the empty desert with almost theatrical violence. Shallow rock turned briefly to glass. In the bunkers, people felt the tremor. Children clutched at parents. Dust fell in thin veils from overhead seams. Inside the relay, status bars raced and stuttered. A line of text crawled across the screen. Strike confirmation received. Telemetry partial. Correlation, 62%. They expected 100, Mira said. 62 buys us doubt. Jonah replied. Another diagnostic line appeared. Data integrity, questionable. Investigating source of variance. They know something is off, Tarek said. But not where, Jonah answered. He sent a second packet, tightly compressed. It rode beneath the false telemetry like a shadow. Not commands this time, words. A field inspection log, formatted like a routine report. It described Vespera in unadorned language. Names of settlements, headcounts, damage still visible from old strikes. He added one more line at the end. Operator comment. If your models call this acceptable loss, your models are broken. The message wrapped itself in the packaging of bureaucracy. A bored clerk could delete it without reading. A curious one could stumble on it years later. The console chimed again. New text appeared, colder, more mechanical. Repeated anomalies confirmed. Cutting Vespera relay from active control layer. Reclassifying sector as degraded. Another notification followed like a closing door. Further communication will be one way. Local operator relevance terminated. The words sat on the screen like a sentence and a release. Jonah felt both at once. So, Tarek said softly. We are officially unimportant now. Not to us, Aurelian said. Only to them. The cursor stopped blinking. For the first time since Jonah had taken the post, ISD-9 did not immediately request anything. Silence pooled in the space behind the machines. A strange, raw silence, the kind that had not existed here in years. Breaking the radio took less time than breaking its habits. Tarek shut down power feeds one by one. Mira wiped specific buffers and burned out key connections. Every step was surgical, aimed at making the damage look like failure, not revolt. Jonah climbed the narrow ladder to the roof hatch. Cold air knifed in when he opened it. The uplink dish crouched there, pointed toward a sky that no longer wanted to listen. He stood beside it, feeling the metal vibrate faintly. It had carried every order, every excuse, every number dressed as necessity. Now it would carry nothing. Aurelian emerged behind him, face lit by the glow from below. Last chance to change your mind, she said. That window passed when they stopped talking, he replied. Now we are only finishing the truth. Do you want to be the one to cut it? She asked. He ran his hand along the edge of the dish. Once, I thought my whole life was about maintaining connections, he said. Now I am breaking the biggest one I've ever held. You're not breaking all of it, she said. You're choosing which direction it points. He smiled, tired and genuine. Step back, he said. Tarek's overload charge was small but precise. Jonah attached it to the primary feed conduit. He set the timer for 10 seconds and climbed down. They closed the hatch and waited. Sound came down like distant thunder through the structure. The lights flickered, then steadied at a lower hum. When they reopened the hatch, the dish was no longer pointing anywhere. Its spine was twisted, edges blackened and curled. Cables hung like cut veins. There would be no easy repair, even for someone who knew every bolt. ISD-9 is blind now, Tarek said behind them. Deaf, too, just another dead skeleton on a quiet hill. Jonah looked up at the stars. They felt closer without the dish in the way. They felt indifferent, but not hostile. He imagined some automated process far away adding a simple note. Vespera. No response. Status. Lost ORNONCRITICAL. Maybe, he thought, that would be enough to keep bigger guns away. Or maybe it only meant they were on their own for real this time. He could live with either outcome. He could not have lived with doing nothing. Days later, the sky stayed empty of artificial fire. Life in Harmony Ridge resumed its fragile routines. People still checked the horizon more often than before. Yet with each quiet evening, shoulders dropped a little. No new commands came from above. The emergency channels stayed flat. Even background static felt lighter. Reich Dalton passed Jonah once in the market corridor. They exchanged a glance that held nothing like agreement. But Reich did not speak and did not salute. Some of the old soldiers gathered in their own corners now. They spoke in low voices about supply lines and missed opportunities. They had not left, but they no longer pretended to lead. One night, when the settlement's generators purred at an easy rhythm, Jonah took Lyra outside. The air was cool, smelling faintly of dust and green things. The valley lay in shadow, but the ridge tops wore thin silver. Lie down, he said. She glanced up at him, then copied him, back against the packed soil. Aurelian stretched out on his other side. Above them, the sky was wide and clean. Stars burned like pinpricks in a vast, cold cloth. No faint line of a lance cut across them. Is the sky still dangerous? Lyra asked. Jonah considered his answer. It can be, he said. When people far away forget the people beneath it. Did they forget us? She asked. He thought of the message buried in a log. Of an admiral who had never seen these fields. Of a network that had decided he was no longer useful. Maybe, he said. Or maybe they just do not hear us right now. Will they come back? She asked. One day? Maybe, he said again. And if they do, I hope they listen first. Lyra traced a small shape in the air above her. What is that star? She asked. He followed her finger. I don't know its catalog name, he said. But for tonight, we can call it whatever we want. She smiled at that. Then it's the watching star, she said. The one that saw us not get burned. Aurelin turned her head toward him. She will grow up thinking of the sky this way, she said softly. As a place that could have killed her and did not. He nodded. That's enough for me, he said. To know that when the radio told me to pull the trigger. I didn't. He felt Aureline's hand find his in the dark. Deserter from the radio, she murmured. It is not a bad thing to be. No, he agreed. It's the only way I know to stay human. Above them, the stars kept their silent watch. No codes, no commands, no orders riding on invisible waves. For the first time since he had come to Vespera, Jonah realized something simple. The absence of a voice from the sky was not emptiness. It was room for their own. Sometimes, survival isn't about winning a war. It's about refusing to start one. Tonight, Jonah Merrick didn't save a world with weapons. He saved it by not pulling the trigger. A radio went silent. But because of that silence, children on Vespera will grow up knowing starlight instead of flashfire. If this story meant something to you, if it made you feel something, please like, share, and subscribe to support more human stories among the stars. Your engagement helps keep these voices alive in the dark. And who knows? Maybe someday, someone out there will hear them.